And Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Freedom is a prospect that is frightening in its ambiguity. It is so very frightening that we as humans will remain in cruel, monotonous, oppressive situations much longer than we should. In this week's Torah portion, Korach challenges Moses with, "Is it not enough that you brought us from a land flowing with milk and honey to have us die in the wilderness, that you would also lord it over us?" The land of milk and honey to which Korach refers is Egypt, the land where Jews lived in chattel slavery, brutalized, subjugated, and with every aspect of their lives determined by their oppressors. Yet the further and further that Moses leads the Jewish people from enslavement, the more Korach and his followers distort the memory of chain, of whip, of rape, of torture, of death. Within this distortion, this impatience with wandering in the ambiguity of the desert wilderness, Korach begins to yearn for the certainty he had in Egypt. He has now traveled so far in the wilderness that his memory of events is distorted. In his yearning for the certainty that came with his enslavement, a certainty in which he had rules that he was forced to follow in exchange for the food and shelter provided by the Egyptians, he now recalls his slave life as one of milk and honey. In other words, wandering in freedom toward the promised land, and all of the uncertainty that brings is for Korach cognitively, emotionally, and spiritually sacrificed at the altar of certainty. In Korach's mind, the certainty of enslavement is better than the ambiguity of freedom. And we are all Korach. And so often we remain locked in the Egypt of our own minds, reduced in pain. We fear the proverbial wandering in the desert so much that we refuse it, rationalizing our decisions with anticipation of future yearnings for the oppressive state we left behind. We convince ourselves that it's better to stay in a cruel situation where we know the rules than one in which we must learn new ones. In response, we conjure terrible ideas of the imagined future. We project Korach mind into the future. With this, I invite you to consider, what is fear of ambiguity keeping you from doing in this moment? What is fear of ambiguity keeping you from doing in this moment? What freedom are you refusing? What fabled milk and honey of your present circumstance are you using to rationalize your continued existence in it? I'll give you a moment because I'm a counselor and I'm quite used to silence. The Egypts that were constructed for you by those who benefited from keeping you small, how very certain and ordered they have been. How very certain is the voice of our own inner oppressor who sabotages our steps to freedom, telling us things like, you know, you're never going to be able to do things differently. Retreat back into the shadow, lest you really get hurt by your wandering. How often have we yearned for the certainty of the places from which we came, even as hellish as they were? Korach is for us the distorted tendency to yearn for a fabled past, to gaslight ourselves into pretending that the enslaved spaces of our minds and body are in fact a land of milk and honey. Torah's wisdom is unambiguous in teaching us where this tendency will lead. After Korach and Moses built sacrificial fires to test which of them truly has the ear of God, Korach and his followers are swallowed up by the earth. quite unambiguous. Adonai, our God, has answered the question of whether freedom is a better condition for the human soul than a bondage that is emotional, intellectual, social, and certainly physical. Yet this isn't where things end. We are not instructed in the wisdom of forgetting our past or the tendency to yearn for a distorted version of it. For Adonai then instructs the Jews, remove the firepans of those who have sinned at the cost of their lives, and let them be made into hammered sheets as plating for the altar. For once they have been used for offering to God, they have become sacred, and let them serve as a warning to the people of Israel. Let us, queer Jews, let us be warned against misremembering oppressive forces in our own lives. Be they people, be they institutions, or be they the torment of addiction or depression through which we have suffered. Let not the past seduce us, keeping us from crossing the sea of reeds or calling us back once we've journeyed far beyond it. Let us not allow the myth of milk and honey to make us lose hope in our path forward, courage in our freedom, awareness of resiliency in ourselves as this people, Israel. Rather, let us use these memories to shape our own armor. Let our resiliency be fortified with the ability to perceive fear and the accompanying mental distortions that would tell us that the certainty of oppression is preferable to freedom. Let us be aware of the tendency to fool ourselves with false stories of the past so that we may see past the distortion and toward the promised land of our soul. For none are mightier or more resilient than we, a fact that is both ancient in its premise and indisputable in its continued revelation. Let us move forward then, knowing that the principal guiding force of Moses is alive and well in each of us. When we begin to question our freedom, when we begin to thirst, when we feel ready to drop in the proverbial desert sands that threaten to swallow our very soul, let our eyes be opened. Let us look to our left and to our right. Let us notice the Jewish people who march alongside, shoulder to shoulder, for as far as the eye can see. Let us see our allies in struggle as well, who themselves seek freedom from tyrannies in their own lives. Let us see the fallen, the shamed, the severely oppressed, and recognize in their eyes the story of us. Let us recognize the miracle of our resiliency, the miracle that comes with standing together as one. Let our choice of freedom for our lives be as the staff of Aaron, sprouting, producing blossoms, ultimately bearing fruit. This is our promise. From our fear and the tendency to circle back and become mired in it, let us march on, reshaping, repairing the world for a better tomorrow. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Yasher Koach. Thank you.